Well, on that week when Pope Leo got elected as Pope, the new pontiff for the Catholic Church, we were very excited, and it was happened that morning while I was standing talking to our secretaries, and I received a call from our nuncio, Cardinal Christophe Pierre from Rome. And I was surprised because it was just a couple of days after Pope Leo got elected. And so I walked into my office, and I responding to the call and said, hello. On the other side, Cardinal Christophe Pierre said, hello, this is Cardinal Christophe. Are you Michael? And then I respond, yes, this is he, and are you alone? And I said, yes, I'm alone in my office. And he said, well, Pope Leo just appointed you as the bishop of the Diocese of San Diego. What do you think? And I said, I think this is exciting that I get chosen to be the bishop in the Diocese of San Diego, knowing that this is really a surprise because Pope Leo just got elected. And from what I understand, Cardinal McClory had shared with us that it might take 6 months to a year to get a new bishop in the diocese. And yet, here I am with Pope Leo just being elected, and he had appointed me to be a bishop for the Diocese of San Diego. This is such an exciting moment for me, and I hope for our diocese as well. And that was my response, and it was my excitement to see that called on that day. It was a memento for me to be receiving that call.
The day I received the call from Cardinal Pierre appointing me Bishop of Sioux City, I was preparing for a very, what I thought would be a stressful meeting with the diocesan treasurer, with members of my parish staff over the alienation of some property and working through some difficult legal issues surrounding my parishes that were located on the north coast of Lake Erie. My phone rang, I looked at it, it said Apostolic N, and I thought, this is either a joke or I've done something bad. And so I answered the phone very tentatively, and the voice said, are you alone? And I said, well, I can be. So I simply closed my office door, and I watched the members of my staff and the diocesan treasurer through the glass doors walking into the conference room. When he told me that I was named the Bishop of Sioux City, I said, where? And I thought, is that in South Dakota? And then I thought, no, this is a joke. And so I actually said, is this a joke? And he said, and he laughed, and he was very patient. And he said, no, Father, I assure you, this is no joke. The Holy Father wants you to be the Bishop of Sioux City, and that's in Iowa. It's like the room began to spin, and my hands began to shake, and I began to sweat profusely. And then I said, well, can I talk to my spiritual director? And he said, well, he can't make that decision for you, can he? And you will say yes, of course. At which point I said, oh, okay. And I thought of, as a priest, as a deacon, I promised obedience. And so, okay, yes, obedience to my bishop, but now I've got the Pope's representative calling me, and so I need to be obedient. So I said yes, and hung up the phone, and then I quickly looked at the computer to see where Sioux City was, because I had no idea.
I grew up in Houston, and I was a priest for the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston for 25 years. 10 years ago, my job, my ministry, was taking care of priests, a vicar for clergy. And so one Monday morning, I got a phone call in my office, and the person on the other line says, Father Brendan, the Holy Father has chosen you to be the Bishop of Victoria in Texas. I kind of responded right away. I didn't think about it. I just said, well, yes, it's so close to home. And I thought about that. A couple of things for me, I didn't really hesitate. It's kind of, I thought if I'm called or asked to do, I would say yes. And I would hope a basic obedience would always be if the Holy Father, my bishop, if somebody asked me to do something, I would say yes, be open to it. And another thing, I felt very fortunate. My whole life has been in South Texas, around the Houston area. And Victoria is about 120 miles from home. So it's very close to home, a rural area, a wonderful diocese. I knew about it. I had taught at our seminary. I taught some of their priests. And so I felt very comfortable going to Victoria. And so I remember the call very much. And mine, I have to acknowledge, like most bishops will say they were very humble and had to think about it. And I guess maybe I have a little pride or something, because I said yes right away. And I said, yes, Lord, if you need me, I'll do it.
I have my own story of receiving the phone call from the Apostolic Nuncio and how crazy that was 8 years ago. But I had a really wonderful experience as well. It was just a couple of years ago that I saw on my phone, it said Apostolic Nuncio calling. This time it didn't say unknown number like before. And so my heart was beating. I thought, oh no, am I going to get another call? Am I going to get transferred? And I quickly answered, hello, this is the Apostolic Nuncio. I know, you're on my phone. Yes. And he was establishing protocol. Are you Bishop William Wack of the... Yes. What? And he said, well, what's the matter? I said, I just say what you're going to say. And he said, I need a phone number from you. Oh, is that all? So I gave him the phone number for Father Pat Neary, a fellow Holy Cross religious in my congregation, because he was going to call him to be a bishop. And then I didn't say anything. Of course, you can't say anything. And I waited. And then later on, I got a couple, I think it was a day later, but the next day I got a text from Father Pat, who said, hey, Bill, could you call? And at that point, he had said that, he said he didn't know about this number and blocked it. And so I said, it's serious. It's for real. Unblock him. Listen to this person and then say yes, Pat. And he did.
I was in Assisi when I received the first call from the nuncio. I ignored it. 3 calls later, when I was in Rome, I returned it. And we've all heard the expression, the surprise of your life. Well, this was the surprise of my life. After 50 years as a Capuchin friar, and all those years of ordination, 40, I get the call to serve the church as a bishop. So it was one of absolute surprise. I had no idea it was coming. And when the Apostolic Nuncio called me, I didn't recognize his voice. But when he said apostolic, I said nuncio. He said, you know me. I said, I don't. But I know you were in Mexico, and I know you loved Mexico. And so we talked about Mexico for about 5 minutes. And then he told me of my appointment. And I said yes. Through the grace of God and the support of my brothers, my Capuchin brothers, as well as my friends, my family, have followed now in this particular ministry.
I got a call from the nuncio, and he's concerned about how you feel. He says, are you by yourself? I said, yes. He says, can you talk? Yes. Are you sitting down? I said, should I be? He said, yes. So I sat down, and then he said, the Holy Father wishes you to be an auxiliary bishop of Washington. Total surprise to me. And then he told me all the things I should do in the next few days and what was going to happen. And then he ended with the question that I guess he asked any priest that the Holy Father would call to be a bishop. He says, you do accept, don't you? And I said, yes. So my conversation was yes. Should I be? Yes. So that was it. Okay. I enjoy being a bishop. I enjoy being a pastor. And I rely on the grace of God to be able to do both.
At the time I was named a bishop, I was pastor of a large parish that also had a high school. And I remember it was just between the first and second quarter of the high school playoff game. And suddenly I saw that the nuncio had called. And so I went and took the call in front of the high school. Then he asked if I was driving, and I said no. He said, are you sitting down? And I said no, but I took the call anyway, and that's when I heard the news. And so it really is a life-changing call to get. One would never expect or anticipate that. But it came with a great sense of peace. And in my response to him, I said, I am not worthy of this, but if the Holy Father wants to call me to this, then I'll certainly accept and serve as I can to the best of my ability with the gifts, pray God, that I've been given by the Lord.
To receive the call from the nuncio was life-changing. But that day began like any other day, but there was a sense, when something big is going to happen in your life, there is a change in your life. It was in the afternoon, and I had gone back to my rectory from the chancery, and I was just standing there, and then the call came. I had been the diocesan administrator, and so in that role, I was communicating with the nuncio. So I had his number. And so I thought it was regular business. So after the pleasantries, he asked, where are you? Are you by yourself? Are you sitting down? And after I said, yes, he said, the Holy Father has appointed you as the next bishop of Houma. I was shocked. I was speechless, and it was dead silence. Are you there? Yes, I'm here. Is that a yes? Dead silence. Is that a yes? Are you there? Anyway, eventually I said yes.
I will say that both calls were similar in that I was not available when they were called the first time, whenever Cardinal Pierre called me. The first time when I was called to become the auxiliary bishop of the Archdiocese of St. Louis, I will say that that morning was a Lenten weekday, and the gospel was about the rich young man, and I preached about how the rich young man refused to do what the Lord asked of him. And I thought, isn't this the sense of humor of God, that now I'm being asked something, and how can I refuse of what the Lord is asking me to do for the church, to live out being a bishop? I embraced the call, trusting. You always trust that God will give you the grace to be the shepherd you are called to be as a bishop. So I trusted in that grace of God that would help me to do that. I will say that the second time I received a call from Cardinal Pierre about being the shepherd for the Archdiocese of Mobile, I had to give a second take on that, because I asked him, now you're talking about Mobile, Alabama, because I thought maybe there was a Mobile, Alaska. So I wanted to make sure I had it right. But I will say that being called for Mobile, Alabama, I knew was the right Mobile, because as I went for my time of the press conference, the people were so gracious and friendly. I knew that the Lord was calling me to a place of tremendous love and support and generosity, and to be able to serve that wonderful archdiocese, knowing that local church, it was a way for me to be a good shepherd for them. I will say once again, I wasn't available. I was actually, when he called, I was in the confessional hearing confessions, and then I went right from there to celebrate a 75th anniversary of a parish, and then I went after that to the reception, so I didn't get there until late. And I did call the papal nuncio back, but it was a little late for him, I guess, to answer the phone. But I wanted to make sure the next day I did follow up, so he knew that I did want to talk to him about this, but I didn't know it was about a move. But I trusted that the Lord was possibly calling me to that, and overnight I was praying that I would be always open to saying yes. I will say whenever we had the conversation eventually, I presumed, and I will say that I believe that when you're a bishop, you truly put your trust not only in the Lord, but in the Holy Father and his call to be appointed to a diocese or archdiocese. And I immediately started presuming. I embraced the call of what the Holy Father was asking of me. And before I got ahead of myself, I was trying to go to next steps. And Cardinal Pierre said, oh, before we go any farther, do you accept? And I thought, well, I better step back and say, yes, I do accept, trusting in the Lord's graces once again to become Archbishop of Mobile. So I will say that he was very helpful and supportive, and he reminded me that as I embraced that call to be Archbishop, It was a way to embrace the call of Jesus to be, once again, a good shepherd for the Archdiocese, the local church of Mobile.